Yes, I did it. The corset is not an exact replica of the one that was worn. I will be using that one under this bubble dress. If you've been with me for a while, you knew this was going to happen. Way back in like August or September, when I decided to make the bubble dress, I started with the undergarments because that's where I always start, and I made a corset and a hoop skirt. I ended up redoing the hoop skirt. I hadn't really finished it, but I redid it to create the proper shape. At the time, the only photo of a corset undergarment worn by Ariana in the Wicked movie was this one. I just went along using that corset under the bubble dress. But just weeks after completing that corset and spending over 50 hours making it, new photos emerged, of course, of the real corset worn under the bubble dress. It's somewhat similar in shape, but I'm a perfectionist. So me willingly choosing to not replicate the real corset under the bubble dress is just not really an option in my mind. I know there's a whole thing about perfectionism, but I am one that I want to do it correctly, especially when I'm going to spend hundreds of hours making the outer dress. I might as well redo a corset that maybe took 50 hours and get something that's more accurate. So this is the journey of making that new corset. If we look at some of these new photos of what was worn, we see that it does not have a front opening. It's only in the back with lacing. It's more of a standard looking corset with straight up and down boning and seams. And then the front has some really unique curved seams going on. Overall, I was just intrigued to try out a corset design with those unique lines. And then in the front, at first I was wondering where the boning was placed, but Ariana posted this nice up close photo of it. The boning lines go more vertically through those curved seams. Just a unique take on corset design, which I think is so fun. I don't know yet, but I don't believe the corset will ever be shown on the big screen. It's just an undergarment worn under the bubble dress, but the design and creativity of it is very Oz-like. I'm excited to move on to making this second corset, and my first corset, it's gonna sit in my storage, but it works great for my other Glinda outfit that I made, which is her traveling look, and maybe even other future looks that I decide to make. But anyway, let's get started. After pulling out one of my corset patterns with some similar lines, I made a mock-up, and then I drew on the desired lines that would match Glinda's. From here, it's cut apart along those drawn lines. And now I have pattern pieces with all the correct lines and can go on to making a mock-up of this. I was very happy with this mock-up, and after making some subtle adjustments, it's on to cutting out all the fabrics. The base layer will be a cotton courtille. With corsets especially, I like to chalk the sewing lines and then cut the approximate seam allowances. After cutting the courtille, there's then an interlining of basic cotton and the pink outer silk. This was the same silk used for my other Glinda corset. The interlining is basted to the silk fabric, and I now have my 2 layers of the corset. From here, I sewed a seam between the cup area of the corset, each layers individually. Once sewn and the seam pressed open, the 2 layers are then placed together. The seams will now all be done with the sandwich seam. The next silk piece is placed on the top, right sides with the silk, and then the courtille piece is placed under, right sides to the courtille. And then one sewing line is sewn, which sews the seam and will contain all 4 edges. These edges are trimmed offset from each other to create a gradual diminish of the seam allowances. Here's where you might notice my mistake. Today's video sponsor is Foreo, and I am using their FAQ 202 LED face mask. It is ultra lightweight, wireless, and is made with FlexFit silicone to help mold to your unique face, which in turn provides even LED coverage. With its several different wavelengths, you can combat signs of aging, reduce wrinkles and blemishes, and reduce oiliness, and also help enhance your complexion. I've been using it for the past month or so, and I've really enjoyed its easy to use aspects, especially its aspect that I can just easily put it on, let it do its work while I can go and do my own work. For using, it's as easy as applying some of the Manuka Honey Base Primer on clean skin, placing the mask, and then choosing your choice of treatment. You can use their app, and there's pre-programmed treatments that combat different things, and they automatically go through a few different wavelengths to produce those, or you can simply click the mask and then click through to get to your choice of benefit. And you can now get an additional 30% off of Foreo products on their website, and that is 30% off existing promotions on their website. So it's a stackable coupon. Use the code 30Bella to receive that 30% off on almost all Foreo products, and you can use the link in my description to find it. And again, that's stackable with ongoing promotions. So I wasn't allowing for the fact that I needed an opening for my boning channels to go through these curved seams, because these are vertically placed boning and the seams of the corset are very curved, and so the boning will be going through the seams. And the sandwich method does not work when doing that. I ended up having to do some makeshift things to fix it, but if you're doing this corset, I would recommend assembling the whole front piece individually from each other, the two layers, and then starting the sandwich method at the side seams, where the boning starts getting placed along the seams. After getting these curved seams pressed into submission, top stitches are done to secure it in place. Of course, done to match the original, but I will say added even more trouble to my boning placement in the future. This is continued on with the rest of the pieces. Within these seams, the waist tape is also placed, something I nearly forgot about and just had a couple inches to unpick to allow for its placement. When placing these two front pieces together along with the waist tape, I realized a predicament of using the sandwich seam and trying to get the waist tape in place. Because this first curved seam faces the opposite direction than the rest, it's impossible to do the seam with the waist tape. Overall, it was one of those moments that improvising would need to happen, but also the realization that I chose the wrong assembly method for this front. But no going back now. To fix this one issue, the lower section of the seam was prepared individually, the waist tape placed, and then top stitched together. This whole situation also made the front seam quite the hassle to get laying correctly, and after spending way too many hours making this work, I went on to placing the boning on this front. On any areas where the seams interfered, I had to unpick all 3 sewing lines and then feed the thread to the back. Usually these would be securely backstitched in place to keep the rest of the seam from unraveling, but these thread ends were so very short that I had a aha moment. I usually only use cotton thread, but the thread matching the silk happened to be one of the few poly threads I own. So out came some fire to melt the ends in place. This whole process was repeated many times for each boning channel along the front. The main point of this, don't do what I did. Anyway, I finally got to the side and back seams that allowed for a sandwich seam that actually made the assembly easier and created boning channels along them, not through them. Instead of doing the back how I usually do, folding both seam allowances in and doing a top stitch along that outer edge, I thought a little overlap of the silk around the edge would look nice so the cotil wouldn't peek out the edge. So the cotil was folded in, pressed in place. From here, the silk is wrapped around to the back, trimmed, and then the edge turned under, so there's a little more than a 1/4 inch silk edge. This gets top stitched in place and also creates a boning channel. Now it's time to insert the boning. I'm doing a combination of steel and synthetic whalebone. At the front, it's the whalebone, since it allows for some more shape, and then the back is steel. Before finalizing the edge, there are many holes to make. As scary as it is to place holes in something you've spent so much time on, I do love the process of placing all these shiny grommets. After trying it on and making some adjustments to not only the shape of the edges, but also the fit, yes, I did have some seams I ended up redoing to allow for just a slightly better fit. And after that, I finally went on and bound the edges with bias cut binding. So did you notice something a little bit off? This little pesky piece? It's cut on the wrong grain line. So that is what incorrect grain line cuts does to you. I checked the fabric, didn't see a difference. I was cutting out of scraps from my other corset, and just in general, it's scrap pieces. Whatever I did not check the grain line on this one piece, and I almost took it out and re-put it in, but then I decided not to because it would have been so much work, and it's fine, really. I wish the other one was just the same because it would have added a unique touch to it, but now I just have a one-sided, unique, very obvious, not cut to the grain piece. But hey, overall, I am happy with the corset and how it's fitting, and I'm excited to put the bubble dress over it. There you have it, making my second Glinda corset, and I am very happy with it. And now I get to sew snaps along it to allow the bubble dress bodice to snap into place. So that's what keeps the bubble dress in place, snaps between the bodice and the corset. We see a lot of behind the scenes photos about this, but also if we look at one of the costume test photos, we see that only sections of the bodice are placed on. I would guess this is because the dress wasn't done yet and they wanted to do this costume test, but this actually gave me a great idea to want to do for mine, is because the beading is going to take so much time. I am very excited to place these snaps and then be able to just snap a piece on here and there and see how it's looking. And most bodices, you just can't do that. So I think that'll be fun. But anyway, very, very happy about this new corset. I have the understructure of the bubble dress figured out, and now I can finally move on to doing the rest of the things. The next video will be about finishing or making the petticoat. Also, getting sequins on the structured net layer that I airbrushed. And quick note, if you happen to purchase the pattern for my first Glinda corset, you will receive a free download of this corset pattern once it is released. So be on the lookout for that. And for those of you who didn't purchase it, you will be able to purchase either version. And with that, thank you again for watching, and stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe for this channel when new Glinda content and other content is posted. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons, YouTube members, and Instagram subscribers for their continued support. As a reminder that I have that bubble dress collection that's just a one-time purchase that gets you early released progress, photos, and information because it is taking so long to make, but it's a one-time purchase. Thanks for watching, and go out there and learn, create, and inspire.